Welcome to our compliance conversations in the midst of COVID-19, hosted by ILSA and Spotted Insurance. Today, we're going to be covering newspaper publication requirements. What's that?
Are there still newspapers? What? We're having to publish things on newspapers. This is going to be interesting. Oh my goodness. Well, thank you everyone for participating and for being here. This is going to be a 1-hour session. At the end of 1 hour, we're done. We are going to cover a lot of valuable information. All of your mics have been muted. However, if you have a compliance question that you want to bring up to the guest panelists, please type those in the Q&A section. So Ted, if you'll just tell us who our guest panelists are.
Our guest panelists are Joanne Delgado, Vice President, Education and Compliance, the Surplus Science Association of California, a regular, and Diana Serra, who's the Vice President and Account Manager at Corporate Creations. Welcome, first timer.
As she's on vacation, I guess.
I know.
Oh.
Amazing. Thank you.
I heard you were on vacation, so I thought you were going to be like coming in from the beach or something. We're going to see water in the background.
It's pouring outside here, and
Oh,
we're not at our location yet, but I will be probably around the time this finishes. So.
All right. So our ILSA participants are Russ Foster, General Manager at ILSA, and from our annuals and corporate department, Sabrina Slater is Manager, and Tameika Johnson is the Supervisor. Our chat manager is the famous Joyce King, Quality Assurance Administrator.
Everybody loves Joyce, boy, because she gives out some zingers. One thing that I want to cover real quick is our regulatory bulletins that we always post on our ILSA newsroom. Russ, if you'll just share your screen. Ted, did you give him permission to share the screen?
Oh, we should talk about that.
One of the things, of course, we're doing these were prompted because of COVID-19, and it's all about sharing resources. And a lot of the bulletins have to do with extensions that were caused because of COVID-19.
All right. Do you see the newsroom up there?
It's up there, man.
All right. Then I'm in the right place. So yeah, on our corporate website, ilsainc.com, we have a resource tab that's just chock full of stuff that's valuable all the time, but especially now during the COVIDs, we have up-to-date bulletins. Our marketing team does an awesome job. Just the ones that I have up here now are from yesterday. And it's possible that you could go on to the state websites and those aren't up yet. As soon as they get the information, they post it here. Everything is tagged, so you can actually go through and look for a specific topic. If you pick COVID-19, for instance, then you would get filtered down to all of the bulletins that are specific to that. You can also filter by state. However you need to look at it, it's going to give you the most up-to-date information from the states that you're going to find anywhere, all in one place. So that is pretty awesome. The other thing that we have in our resource tab is we actually have contact information for all of the DOIs, because so many of them still are in work from home status, and so you have some difficulty getting a hold of them. But you have, let's see, we'll go to, let me go to California since we got Joanne on here. If we click on California, you'll be able to see the Department of Insurance contact information. Also, they have a licensee search that links directly to that. The Department of Revenue, Secretary of State, business entity search, that'll link directly to that, and the stamping office. Yay, stamping office. So we've got all the information there that you need for each of the states, and they will be able to help you as much as you need. That's all there free for everybody that wants to use it. So if you want to bookmark that state page, if you're in multiple states, that's a very handy resource.
Awesome. Thank you, Russ. The other two sites that I would like to share with everyone today that our team has found really useful is the WSIA.org. So if you're in the surplus lines side, that's really helpful. And the AICPA. So that will help, AICPA.org. site. That will help you in terms of your filings with the Department of Revenue, with the Secretary of State, tell you about any extensions that have been extended because of COVID-19. So Sabrina, today we're going to be covering newspaper publication requirements. Jeez, I don't think there's a lot of newspapers around the country, so I'm super interested to know the state requirements, so let's jump right into it.
For the sake of organization, like this information is kind of super detailed, but it's not hard, it's just detailed. So for the sake of organization, we're going to start off like with what are newspaper publications, like you just asked, the type of information that's generally requested, the main states to ask for it at the ND level, and then I'm going to flip it over here to Sabrina. And so if you start discussing like the trade names, DBAs at the SOS level, that require publications, and then at the county level. So what is a newspaper publication? Basically, you're just notifying the public that you're doing business in that state. So it's normally, for our purposes, done right after you register with the Secretary of State. As far as which entity is required to do it, whether it's foreign or domestic or LLC corporation, that depends on the state. How often? For the most part, it's one time and you're done, but Nevada has to be different, and it's every single year for them. You asked why this is done. I found an article for this lady who's writing about New York, and I like how she put it. She said, you know, it's a relic. And basically, that's what it is. It's like back in the day, newspaper was all that you had. That's no longer the case, but let's keep it going out tradition, I guess. Tradition is good. So the type of information that's requested, the company name, the principal address, the registered agent, which we'll see is very important. The date the authority was filed, the officer information, and in some cases, like, you know, some contact information, so you can forward that back to you. There's normally a fee. So you have like the vendor's fee, and that can also include, like, depends on how long your article is, how many lines can also be included in that fee. There are several states that we're going to mention here. We're going to bring in 4 states, but the 2 primary states at the ND level that are the most common are Nevada and New York, so I'm going to hit those up first. For Nevada, they tell you that it's the foreign corporation that's required to file it every March 31st. If you register with the Secretary of State after March 31st, then you won't have to worry about it until the following year. I like their website because it has it pretty much spelled out, and you can kind of pretty much just search the question. It's called NRS 80.190, number 3. And, you know, it'll state what the rules are, and it'll explain that it's foreign corporations. Unfortunately, you'll have vendors that'll still send it to partnerships and LLCs, but for the website, if you look, it has a question that says, I'm an LLC, I'm a partnership, am I required to file? And they clearly say no. So if you're still receiving that, you know, maybe kind of investigate on your end why, but they say foreign corporations. They include in their languages about the penalty, and they'll say the penalty is like $100 a month for every time you haven't done it. And then it also says that you're not allowed to transact business in the state. That's what's stated on the website. The agency will need to choose the vendor. The thing that they want, though, the newspaper has to be published in Nevada, and then it has to have a weekly circulation of at least 1,000. If you're not sure, if you check on the vendor's website, and they should have like a form that's on there to kind of, you know, let you know that they have that circulation, they met that requirement. If you don't think you're doing business in the state, if you're not doing business, you don't need to be doing a publication. We go by the registration with the Secretary of State, but if you're not sure, it's on their website, and it's NRS 80.015. It's a list of activities that they consider should not be doing business. So if you meet that, you know, then you don't have to do it. The newspaper will send you proof of publication, and then you just keep it for your files. For the most part, you're just keeping it for your files, but not for all states. And one of those states is New York. It applies to foreign and domestic LLCs. And it has to be done within 120 days from the point that you register with the Secretary of State. It has to be in 2 newspaper publications. If you have an office in New York, the 2 newspapers must be in that county. And the publication has to be done once a week for 6 successive weeks in both of the newspapers. So they tell you that one paper has to be printed daily and the other one has to be printed weekly. I don't know if that requirement about being printed daily is going to be as easy as it was in the past. I know my town used to have a daily paper, and now it's like every other day or something like that. So good luck with that. The newspaper has to be approved by the county clerk, first off, and they have a list of approved vendors for you to pick from. You'll have to investigate the fees. It can be anywhere from like $600 to $1,200, depending on the paper. We end up using like Albany a lot because we based on where the registered agent is if you're foreign. At the end of the 6th week, the newspapers will send you an affidavit of publication, basically saying that they've ran it for the 6 successive weeks. You'll have to go onto the New York Secretary of State website and you have to fill out this form called the Certificate of Publication form, which the agency would have to sign. And then when it's all done, you have to mail to the Secretary of State those 2 affidavits, that signed form, and a $50 filing fee to the New York Secretary of State. And they say that, the LLC doesn't fulfill the publication requirements, then your authority to do business in New York. You don't have a right to be doing business in New York, they'll tell you. Now, Arizona, the other 2 states, no, not as common. You have Arizona is one of them. It only comes into play if you're registered agent, if you're foreign, if your registered agent is not in Maricopa or Pima counties. For the most part, they tend to be, but if you're not, it applies to foreign and domestic corporations and LLCs. So if you're not exempt because you're in those counties or your registered agent is in those counties, the publication is due within 60 days after you register. So the notice must be published in a newspaper of general circulation in Arizona for 3 consecutive publications. So it's rare, but just so you're aware, first check to see which county that you're located in or your registered agent is located in. Nebraska is the final one that I will bring up, and they only apply to domestics. So basically, if you're foreign, you don't have to worry about it. There's no penalty, and you don't have to submit any proof. So unless you're from Nebraska, then it's not going to be an issue for you.
The reason that this relic, as you put it, exists is because these people at these states believe in driving their car till the wheel falls off. Is that what it is?
There's no real reason. If you want it, for my part, if I want to know if somebody's doing business in a state, I just go to the Secretary of State's website and I'll look them up. It's pretty much straightforward. If it's like a limited partnership, there might be a different website on the side, but pretty much if you know where to search, you can find it online.
Yeah, but
Nevada talking about, 1,000, you have to have a circulation of 1,000. So it's like, that's how we know everybody in the world has seen it. Because, it's kind of like, that's not very realistic. So it seems like an extra requirement that's not really necessary, but they're still doing it for now.
I know it does seem like that to us, but I'm sure that their concern is for, Joe and Jane consumer. They don't know to go look at the Secretary of State to look up entities. So, maybe they are getting that daily paper. I don't know, maybe not, but I know I feel like it comes from a good place. And if anybody's,
I think the legislatures just can't be bothered to take those old laws off the books.
Maybe that too.
I was saying, like in Nevada, it'd be like Casino Weekly or something like that. Like for all the gamblers.
That's right.
Diana, we'd love to bring you into the conversation. How successful have you been finding those daily newspapers?
Uh-oh.
Me?
Yes.
Your daily news. I mean, I look at everything online, so I don't get anything delivered to my house, unfortunately.
Yeah, I think the only time I ever pick one up is, at the ILSA office here. So
Yeah.
I don't blame you, Diana. Okay, so kind of moving on to like trade names and the publication requirements. There are several states that have those requirements, and we'll kind of start off with where we primarily file those publications at. We'll start off with Florida. This particular one's done at the Secretary of State level. The fictitious name publications are a little bit differently done, are done differently there in Florida. They actually have a requirement that you have to file the publication before you actually register the name itself. So that's definitely different. We typically do it after you have that grace period, 30 to 45 days. In this case, you actually have to file it beforehand. It only has to run for 1 day, which, you know, oh, I got it in there. You know, I did my job there. It's only required to run for at least 1 day. If you do not have a physical location, just like with any other, you can use your registered agent office. As we mentioned earlier, primarily we do a lot of work for our foreign business entities, so a lot of times we are using that registered agent address. The name you register must be advertised at least once in a newspaper that is located within the county where your principal place of business is taking place. There is proof of advertisement is not required for Florida. You, the applicant, when you sign off on that fictitious name application, when you sign off on it, you are attesting to the fact that you filed that publication for Florida. So once you sign your name, if you didn't do that requirement, I would highly recommend that you do, because that's that little, you know, clause there. Got to read the fine print. Moving on to Minnesota, it's another one that's filed with the Secretary of State. Sorry, I don't know what that was. After you, Minnesota's one that is filed after you have to file that publication. Once you file the DBA, you must publish the certificate of assumed name with a qualified newspaper. It does have to run for 2 consecutive issues in the county where the principal place of business takes place. There is no statutory time limit, which means that your DBA is not going to expire, but they do consider it not active or a legal fictitious name or DBA in that state until that publication requirement has been met. You definitely have to file it even though they don't require proof of it.
Hey, Sabrina, so I just want to stop you for 1 moment. So if you have an agency that is filing for a DBA and they're not using a vendor to take care of their registered agent process or a vendor for compliance, they go ahead and they're a foreign corporation, let's say in Minnesota, they're using a friend as a registered agent. How are they keeping track of the fact that they actually have to file their DBA on these, they have to publish the DBAs with the newspapers?
As far as I know, they're not really tracking it per se. I do know, you know, you don't necessarily have to use a vendor or a specific registered agent address. I mean, if you're physically in that location, of course you'd use that address. But as far as I know, they're not tracking it. In our experience, we haven't had any clients that have, you know, got caught in the shorts with that. As far as I know, they haven't got caught.
Right, but I mean, you said that the registration is really not effective until it's published. So they actually are doing business as having this DBA, but it's not really, it hasn't been accepted.
Right, it's not effective in the eyes of the Secretary of State. So if they do happen to find out about it, that's when you're going to be in trouble, for sure.
Yeah, so that's a big concern.
Next, we have Pennsylvania. Per the Department of State website, they're a little bit different. It specifically says on the registration of fictitious name form, and I know this is very specific, but I really thought that it was something that we should share in case this did apply to you. literally on question 4, it's asking who is the interested party. Is it an individual or is it a business entity? And if you list an individual, say you're an actual individual or you're a sole proprietorship, and you list an individual's name in that question number 4 box, then you do have a publication requirement. If you only list, say like the owner is, say, Insurance Licensing Services of America, we're filing ILSA Inc. If we use, if we're filing for ILSA Inc., we would put Insurance Licensing Services of America as the business entity, the interested party. So in that case, we wouldn't have to file a publication. So like I said earlier, typically, you know, we are filing for foreign business entities. We're hardly ever seeing or filing for individuals themselves or even sole proprietorships. So that's really just something I wanted to share with you in case that was your business model. It's definitely a publication requirement. It's not something we typically deal with, but it's definitely something I wanted to share. So small, but you know, information nonetheless. Moving on, last but not least, from the Secretary of State standpoint, we have Nebraska. Nebraska does require publication to be completed for domestic, for-profit, nonprofit corporations, LLCs, and then any kind of foreign or domestic trade names that are filed. Trade names must be published for once a week for only 1 week. And then all the other business entities have to be published once a week for 3 consecutive weeks. Only trade names are required to have the affidavit of publication filed with the Nebraska Secretary of State. They have a 45-day window, and it is 45 days on the dot, where you have the ability that once you've done your publication requirement, you've received your affidavit, you have to actually go out to the Secretary of State website, upload that information, and if for whatever reason you do not do that before 45 days, they will cancel and revoke your trade name, which of course that means you basically give up rights to that name, and so anybody can use that name. So if at all costs, try to avoid that. Don't procrastinate. Do it before 45 days. There is no, like I mentioned, there is no grace period. Now, we were not able to have a specialist from the Nebraska Secretary of State office as a panelist today, but we did have Whitney Kruger with the Nebraska Secretary of State. She's actually a filing manager. We were able to ask her questions like, you know, what are your pain points? What are you seeing as a regulator when you're filing these, or when you're seeing these filings? What would you want the public to know when they're filing these? And so she gave us 2 little quotes, and I am going to read it word for word. You know, it is her words, but I thought they were definitely worth knowing and mentioning. So she stated, specifically follow the required language in statute. If it states that you must provide an initial designated office address, since you had that in quotes, then be certain to include those exact words with the street address information. If the document simply states our business address is blah, 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 that is not providing the required terminology. And of course, that's when you kind of get into the gray area and you're not meeting the specific requirements of the state. She also stated that always make sure the information contained in the notice matches the information contained in the document the notice is being published for. For example, if you're filing a notice of incorporation because you filed articles of incorporation for a new entity, the notice's information, the addresses, names, officers, must match what are given in the articles. Of course, that's a given, but I can see where she's coming from. It wouldn't surprise me a bit if she gets quite a few of those where it's all different. To me, that's common sense, but again, we know how the public works. Okay, so that's really it, what I have from the Secretary of State side. I'd like to kind of bring in Diana now. who is amazing. We work hand in hand with corporate creations for all of our county filing needs. And she knows that we have several county filing requirements, like for a DBA standpoint, but there's only 2 of those states that have publication requirements, and I'll let her talk about those.
Hi. So yes, so California is one of the states where we file at the county level. And so you have to have a location in California and you have to file in the county that you're registered or you're located in. Now, if you don't have a physical office in California, we can file the registration in Sacramento County. In Sacramento County, you can use a different address in another state, so you don't have to have a California address. And the reason why we don't use our registered agent address in California is because the county that we're registered in, you actually have to be conducting business out of that location. So that's why we default to Sacramento County. Sacramento, all the counties, it's a state requirement that when you file your fictitious business name statement, you have to publish your statement at least 1 week for 4 consecutive weeks. And it has to be in the general circulation of the county that your fictitious name is filed. So really, it's just a statement. It's simple information that you fill out on the form, the address, the fictitious name, and the owner name, which is typically an LLC, corporation, whatever it may be. And that must start within 30 days of the filed statement.
And
Do you
Hannah,
you also have it in what? Sorry.
I do have a question for you. So let's say you are a foreign business, you're doing business in California, you're using corporate creations as the registered agent, you guys are publishing in Sacramento, correct?
We're filing the fictitious name in Sacramento, yes,
Okay.
because where we're located, that specific county, they actually, some counties actually come out to the property and they inspect. They just want to ensure that you're actually conducting business out of that location. So Sacramento doesn't have that requirement, and you can list an out-of-state address. So that's why in California, we default to Sacramento County for the publication or the fictitious name and publication.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Diana, there's also a publication requirement in Georgia, correct?
Yes. So that one you do have to file at the county level. The publication, it just must be published in 2 weeks in the county that the DBA is filed in. So we're located in Cobb County, so we publish in Cobb County after it's been registered at the county level.
Okay. Awesome. Well,
Is that all that y'all had to go over sort of as a preface to our questions? Because that was a lot of information and I'm not sure we can tolerate any more right now coming at us like that.
I know when Tameika and I were doing, the research and preparing, I was like, man, we only have one topic, which is publications, and I can't believe how much information we have. It's amazing.
When we talked about doing this webinar, I was like, are we going to be able to fill an hour with publications, really? But clearly y'all did, and we're not done.
But a whole bunch of information.
I want to do 2 things. First, I want to ask Joanne a question, and Joanne is with the California SLA now. I think, Joanne, you're still physically in Jersey, is that right? Or yeah, you're still on the East Coast at the moment.
I am.
Yeah, and Joanne has formerly been with a very, very large broker there in that area. I won't name them unless I'm supposed to name them, but anyways, I know that you were a big part of the compliance there, and I'm just curious, and I know a lot of it was the licensing side. You've also done some consulting, and maybe you still do. I know, again, it's a lot on the licensing side, and today we're focusing more on more of the Secretary of State requirements as relates to those publications. But my question for you is, do you know anything about all this, or is this all news to you today? Or and if you did know about it, how did you find out?
So essentially, we did, when I was on the broker side of the business, essentially we did a lot of corporate restructuring. We built a lot of new companies. We merged a lot of new companies. So in learning about all these different requirements, it can get very overwhelming very quickly. What I do recommend for these types of filings, and I'm going to say in a larger environment, was invaluable to us, was using a service that understood the requirements in the different states. So as a nationwide broker, being registered and needing DBAs in different states, meeting these requirements was the easiest working through a company that's well versed in doing the registrations and understanding what each state required. Certainly in my role, because it was more in the New York area, I became much more familiar with the New York requirements and sort of learned, I'm going to say by a little bit of trial and error, about the states with county requirements like California. But this is difficult information to kind of keep a handle on in terms of organizing. So it takes a lot of, the ladies today have done a fantastic job in terms of providing the overview in all of these states. So
Absolutely.
Tameika and Sabrina, it's very impressive, all the information you put together.
It's like they're walking encyclopedias just on this subject alone.
We do, and there's a lot of, again, to put it all together yourself does take some time. So it's great when you have a resource available that can help you with that process.
Right.
All an agency principal wants, or executives at agencies, they just want to do business in the state. Just get me licensed, and by the way, I'm going to use this name and this name and this name. Just do it, but they don't understand the intricacies of that, right? Like some states need the DBA, some states don't, some counties need it. And so you just keep getting deeper and deeper into the weeds.
Mm-hmm. And I've heard that response from so many people. Like, I just want to do business in the state by this name. How hard is it really? I love it when they ask me that, because then I get to write my email that's that long, and I go, let me tell you how hard it is. But we're on it. We're gonna do it. I mean, unless you want to, but I don't think you do.
Right.
And like our relationship with corporate creations, they're so invaluable to us. We would not want to touch DBA county filings with a 10-foot pole. So hallelujah, thank God they exist, because we're able to, work with them on that. We're still able to be the go-between between our clients who need those filings and then Diana and her crew that do them. But that is just a whole new level of complication that we weren't personally as ILSA wanting to get involved with or in. The other thing I wanted to do real quick before we move into some questions for you guys, I just wanted to, and I don't have a script on this at all, so I'm gonna just try to go by memory because I didn't write a thing down. And I probably should have started this webinar by saying, everybody grab your Big Chief tablet and #2 pencil, because you're going to need it. They're about to fly through some information for you. But we didn't warn them, so I don't know if they wrote it down either. So just very quickly, though, what I wanted to hit some high points before we get into the Q&A. And then when we get into the Q&A, I think some of that stuff's going to help click a little bit too. So just very quickly, I'm going to make this as short and sweet as possible, because I can't possibly repeat everything you guys just said. But you covered what the newspaper publication is for and why it's required. What I want to get into are the little bit more of the states. So after a registration, whether foreign or domestic, potentially, and whether you're an LLC or an Inc. or even a nonprofit, potentially, you could have a publication requirement in New York, in Nebraska, not Nebraska, my bad, Nevada, the other in state there, Nevada and Arizona.
If
Okay.
you're not, if you're not connected to Maricopa and Pima,
True.
Nebraska, if you were a domestic, there's a chance of that. For
True.
them.
It's true. So in Arizona, what she's saying is if you are located, or if you're a registered agent, or whatever your physical location is in Arizona is Pima or Maricopa County, don't worry about it.
Yeah.
But any other counties, fair game, you're going to need to publish, right?
Yes,
Yeah.
the Corporation Commission actually publishes that on their website, so they recognize that as you meeting the requirement.
Because the state actually handles that on your behalf if you're in Maricopa and Pima. That's why that requirement goes away. They go ahead and they do that. So that's why those counties don't have to do a publication. It's handled by the state.
Okay. Go ahead, Tameika. I'm sorry.
I wanted to bring this up really quickly. We have clients that constantly get like ads from other publication vendors in Nevada, and we just wanted to make it clear that just because you give an advertisement doesn't mean that your publication hasn't been handled. And also, to be careful, because they do say foreign corporation. We kind of look into Union. You don't want to be into a situation where you're filing every year, and you're not required to file. So make sure that you're verifying that. But you're going to get advertisements for your business solicitations.
They're going to get
those little scam letters that come through. Is that what you're talking? Okay.
Oh no, they're legit.
They are legit. They're trying to help
need
you.
them.
They are. They're just trying to. They're just trying to get your business. I got you.
The emails that we would get trying to sell you the toner. Remember that, Russ? The toner for the copiers, and you're like, what? Yeah, you're supposed to reorder toner from us, and you've never used them before.
We still get the thing now with that is domain registrations. We get a renewal from somebody who's never registered our domain anywhere.
Right.
So they're still out there trying that stuff.
Or renew your car warranty, and you weren't with them to begin with. Yeah, I get those a lot too. Okay. So that's after a registration, and again, it depends on whether it could be dependent on whether you're an LLC or an Inc. It could be dependent on whether you're foreign or domestic. But
for Florida, the DBA for the SOS, that's the one kind of exception is they want you to do that before you register.
Right. Okay. And I was just about to get to those. So, but you're saying that needs to happen ahead of time. So that's for a trade name filing in Florida.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, SOS.
You need to, say it again, you need to publish in the paper before you file at the SOS. Is that right?
Yep. Yeah, so you just got to know, and you got to do it for one day.
It seems so backwards. What if the name's not available?
Do your due diligence and check it first.
And check the name first. I mean, yeah, that makes sense.
Florida actually allows you multiple names to file at the state level, even so you could have 5 fictitious names with the same name filed, different owners.
Okay. Can you do it on the same form?
Same form, yeah.
What about the one agency name, but it's 2 completely different agencies? One is located in New York and the other is located in California, but they're doing a foreign registration in Florida. Can you have 2 entities with the exact same name right down to the comma space LLC? Do you know that?
No, that it's just for the fictitious name. Yeah, the actual foreign registration has to be a different name.
Okay. And if the foreign registration's already taken, somebody can't use that exact for their fictitious name because it's already taken.
You're right.
Okay.
They have the same fictitious name?
No.
Yeah, you could have several of the same fictitious name in Florida if it's a different owner. It's weird, but it happens.
That is so misleading, right? Like that you can have the same fictitious name owned by different entities.
I will tell you for a fact that is not the case in Nebraska.
No, there are some Secretary of States that don't do not all states do the name availability. And the only way that you can tell the difference if their name is the same or similar is they'll show on there what the jurisdiction is. and they might have an office, and they might have the address, so that's just kind of how you just kind of have to look at it.
That totally goes against all of my 16 years worth of compliance that I've ever, that I know. It's gone. It's gone.
Boy, don't you feel right now like you want to go down to Florida and overhaul their system and say like,
I'm thinking, what?
I'll meet you. I'll drive up to Tallahassee. I'll meet you up there.
All right. It's a party now. Let's go.
crazy.
Okay, real quick, I wanted to rehash on the fictitious names. I just want to list those states again in case anybody didn't get to write it down the first time. Fictitious or trade names you're required to publish possibly. I mean, lots and lots of rules, different rules for each state apply, but potentially Florida and do your publication before your registration.
Mhm.
Okay. Minnesota. Pennsylvania was very specific. So that was only if it was an individual filing a DBA.
Or sole proprietorship. Mhm.
Yeah, who was the interested party. Okay.
Right.
Okay. And that doesn't happen often, we know.
Not on our side. We primarily work with the business entities.
Okay, and then the Nebraska Secretary of State. And then at the county level, we're looking at California and Georgia. Trade name publications. Okay. All right, we only have 20 minutes left, so now we got to fly through some questions.
Buzz. So let's see who buzzes in first.
Yeah, every man for himself. Joanne, unmute so you can hit your buzzer too and get in here. All right. What is the difference between, this is good, I don't know this. What's the difference between a public and a legal notice? Who can tell me that?
From our end, we mostly handle like foreign business, but we've seen the terms kind of used interchangeably, but they do have a specific meaning in some states. So a legal notice is usually like if it's court ordered or judge mandated, required from a state statute or state agency. So like New York, Nevada, Nebraska, and Florida, as well as others. A public notice is a publication that's not court ordered or judgment mandated, but we have seen both terms used on there.
Okay.
But it's basically, you need to do it. Basically.
Can somebody quickly cover for me what type of information is requested to be put into the publication?
Okay, so like we said before, the company name, the physical address, and the registration information. We kind of add some tidbits in there. Like Nevada, for instance, they usually want one officer and like only one title, even if they have more than one, just want one title. New York will ask for the county within New York, which for us, since they're foreign, we usually use the registered agent's county is usually Albany.
State of New York.
Yeah. Because the New York Secretary of State acts as his own registered agent for the most part, and they're in Albany. So, like, those are some tidbits, but it's pretty much what you would expect on that.
Kind of like some of the same stuff you would put maybe in an annual return.
Not as extensive, but
yeah.
I mean,
as far as like the name and the address, and your registered agent is important because that can kind of determine which county that they're using.
it's mainly the name that you're going to be using and doing business under, and then the physical address where you're doing the business at. Those are typically like that's the beef of what they're looking for.
All right. I know Tameika and Sabrina have the answer to this next one, so we'll get to them on that. But I'm curious, Joanne and or Diana, are y'all aware of any consequences to not filing a newspaper publication? Have you seen anything come through?
I have been doing this for 11 years now, 11 years last week, and I've never seen anything come in for it.
For the like the Secretary of State hasn't sent an ugly letter to anybody that you're aware of that says you didn't publish and you were supposed to?
I have a feeling though one day New York's gonna wake up and they're going to start auditing all their stuff and they're gonna start finding people or something.
Oh man.
I don't know. They've never revoked anyone's status to my knowledge for a publication requirement, but you never know when they decide to implement it.
It's true. Maybe right after they hear us talking about it today.
I know, right?
I think it happens when the coffers are somewhat empty and they need to refill.
And that's something that we discovered in our research, you know, from contacting the states, like in reading articles on it. We have to tell the client what the states threaten. So they'll threaten like a penalty, and they'll threaten that, you know, you basically don't have the right to transact business in the state, either the SOS level or, you know, you can't use your trade name. But we have not, as far as like Nevada and New York, in fact, seen like a penalty. But like, you know, like Diana was saying, that could change. So just do it. It's just better safe than sorry.
Right. We get that all the time.
Yeah, the main one that will have consequences, Nebraska, that trade name, they will revoke it.
Gotcha. I mean, we get that all the time. ILSA, is that absolutely necessary? Look, we can only tell you what we're seeing, what the states are telling us, what maybe is written in the statutes. Are they gonna drop the hammer? We don't know.
And so one thing I wanted to point out is for those small agencies, you know, the ones that normally rat them out are their competitors. For those big agencies, like the one that Joanne was formerly of, is everything is scrutinized. Everything is scrutinized. And you definitely don't want to ruin your reputation by consistently not filing the things that you're supposed to file, right, Joanne? So you definitely were under the spotlight and scrutiny constantly.
I was going to say, and we had seen the, I'm going to call it the ugly letters from Nevada and New York during, I'm going to say, a couple of different phases of mergers and I'm going to say breakdowns where we were adding companies. So we've seen the ugly notices from those states. Definitely no fines or repercussions. But once again, I'm going to tell you from a compliance perspective and building your business, you need to build it right from the ground up because that stuff will come back to you at a later date. It's just not worth, it's a little bit of effort, but it's not worth introducing a challenge.
Regulators have long memories.
Yes.
Right.
They have calculators.
I wanted to point out what, you know, to just kind of like expound on what Russ just said. Regulators have long memories, and we as compliance people heading up compliance, let's say you're in the private sector, right? And you're going from one agency to the next, and you didn't do things right when you were with this agency. That regulator is going to say, this compliance expert is not so good at their job.
Yeah.
So
I mean,
stuff to keep in mind.
I mean, in the grand scheme of things, it's a small nominal fee in comparison to down the road what can happen. You know, the fees or legal fees that go into it just because you didn't front the money in the beginning to stay compliant. So
That's all compliance, right?
I'm gonna add something here. Dan Marr once told me that he loved this saying, and I do too, and I think it applies not just to what they do in surplus lines, but to all the states, and that is, friend or foe, get the dough. And it's a scary thought. So people think that just because they're close with them and they make relationships, no, their thing is, hey, we gotta, you got this happen, we got to deal with it, and it doesn't matter whether you have built relationships. It could smooth the way the message is delivered. It might not be a nasty gram. It'll be a lot better, a lot nicer to you, but still, you'll get the message. And they want the money.
Yeah.
Alrighty, let's see. I've got one here that says, I just filed my publication. Now what do I do?
Okay, so as we mentioned before, as we went through each state, it really just depends on the state's requirements. A lot of times, more often than not, they want you to save that affidavit or that proof of publication and just keep it in your records. Now, like I said, like we mentioned, New York, of course, you have to send in that affidavit along with that $50 state fee, and they actually send you a receipt and proof that they have filed it at the state as well. Same with Nebraska, you do have to upload that document. There's no state fee, like we mentioned, but it's still a requirement. You still have to report that to the state. But for the most part, we just keep that in your records. Now, Diana, I know for a fact with California and Georgia, you always send the proof of the publications to us. Do you know of any of the states that require anything once that publication has been submitted? Have you seen any?
For California or Georgia? No.
No, it's just one of those states that just keep it in your records and it is what it is.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Alrighty. We've covered this.
Ladies, I have a question. So in some states, you know, there's a filing requirement that you have to file maybe 4 times or 6 times. From the moment, even before you file, you're good to start doing business the minute that you're registered with the Secretary of State. You've gotten, let's say, your insurance department license. You don't have to wait till all of the 6 publications have been published, correct?
In some cases, yes. I mean, once you filed, you filed. But I know with some of my clients, I don't necessarily know what they do on their end, but they needed to show proof maybe to their carriers that that DBA was filed. I know I've had to reach out with Carlos, who works at Corporate Creations. I'm like, oh, hey, I need this. And he's like, okay, but the publication's not done yet. You know, still got to run for another 6 weeks. So that's part of that proofing that they may need. I don't know if the carrier wants that. They may just want the, you know, like the Secretary of State filing or whatever, or the county filing. But typically I know, especially with my county filings, that I guess it is separated, Diana. You do send me the evidence that it was filed at the county filing, and then once the publication has ran its consecutive weeks, I get that several weeks later too. So yeah.
So Joanne, from your side of a carrier, is that something that was required before you do business with an agency?
No, we actually did not have that requirement in place for our agents, although we did verify registered DBA names with the Secretary of State websites.
Oh.
So, or in some cases, like in California, on the California Department website. So there are various ways to ensure that the DBA names are really legal entities and legal trade names, which we did do, but we didn't require any paperwork.
Okay, so another question to go along with that, Joanne, this one's for you. I know that we're going to do a segment on this in a couple of weeks, producer agreements. In those producer agreements, is the entity name along with all of the DBAs on those producer agreements?
Typically, it is included in the producer agreements, and the producer agreements are usually very comprehensive. So the upside and downside to that is it's all in there, but the plus and minus on both sides is really ensuring that as an agent, you know, entering into that producer agreement, that you understand and are compliant with all those terms and conditions. On the carrier side, it really comes down to the follow-up and I'm going to say auditing and management of those agreements as an ongoing.
Okay, so that's one thing when we cover that topic on producer agreements, we know that DBAs, definitely, and fictitious names plays a role in those agreements.
Are those agreements updated when you're adding new DBAs or terming DBAs, or once it's initiated, you kind of know?
Now, you're supposed to be keeping them up to date, which is where the management part is really critical, and really having, I'm going to say, a program of management in place to help your, I'm going to say, help your producers stay, I'm going to say, stay on track. Because in many cases, there's so many pieces, it's who owns what. So that's where I think on the carrier side, it's very important to have a strong management program in place to keep up with that.
Wow. Interesting. Diana, I'm gonna got this question for you real quick. If I am a foreign entity, how do I know which county I should file my publication requirement in? I think we kind of covered that a little bit, but if you could go a little more specific on that.
Well, if you're actually located in that state, or you have a location in that state, we do suggest that you file in the county you're located in. If you don't have physical presence in that state, we recommend that you use the registered agent's county.
And then do you get with your registered agent? They'll know the rules for that county, or you have to go look them up yourself?
They should know if they are able to assist with the DBA filing, and if not, you could always call Corporate Creation.
I was just gonna give you a plug right there.
That's
Absolutely.
actually how we came across our relationship with Corporate Creations. We had so many clients that were asking us to file these county DBAs, and our existing registered agent vendor didn't file those publication requirements or even the county filings. And so that's actually how we met Diana, and she has been helping us for several years now, with both with the DBA county filings and those publications that go with it.
Right. And if you attendees think that this segment on the publications is rough, wait till we have one on the actual county filings, because that really gets into it.
Well, what's interesting is that there are large registered agent services out there that really don't even have a sector that takes care of the DBA filings. That's amazing.
It is. But I don't blame them, because like I said, we didn't want to touch them either. That's brutal.
Not for us.
I think somebody said, Joyce, look into that. And I was like, yeah, no. we don't want to, trust me. All right, let me see. I've got a couple of other questions, but we're getting short on time. So I want to, Diana, another one for you. I know that some states and counties like Sacramento County in California allow multiple DBA names to be listed on that application. Could I do the same with the publication requirement, or would a separate filing be required for each name? I guess a separate publication for each name.
It can all be done on one. As long, basically, the publication is almost it's the same. It's just the information that was filed, so it all kind of like runs into one little paragraph that they fit into the newspaper. So it can all be done on one. Now, if you filed numerous individual applications, then each individual application that got filed would have to be published.
Okay, but if you filed them all on one application,
you're good to go.
File them all
one fee.
In one publication.
Yeah.
Okay, application, publication.
Save your money.
Right. Okay.
If you can do that with Georgia, Diana?
I'll have to double check. I don't know if Cobb County allows you to do more than one fictitious name on the registration. I'll double check for you.
Like on the list, you could, like on the actual form, but because I've actually seen that with some existing clients. But I don't, like you said, I don't think you can do it with Georgia.
I'll double check. I'm not sure. I mean, sometimes they don't have it on the form, but they let you do it. You can put see attached and you list, an attachment. if they allow that, then I'm sure it'd be fine, but I don't know how it would work with the publication. So I'll double check for you.
Awesome, thank you.
Yeah.
I like the way Diana is fielding compliance questions while her vehicle is moving around.
Yeah.
And we can't even move the steering wheel.
I'm like, I hope she's not driving.
No, my husband's driving. Well, we just got here, so he's not even in the car anymore. He left.
Oh, you're probably ready to get out. One more question, and this is our last question. Can you give me an idea of what some of the costs are involved in publications? How much should I expect to spend? And then do you know what they are basing those fees on?
Is this for me or for Sabrina? For me?
Like at the county level, do you ever see anything? Because like for the most part for us, it's the vendor you pick, and then also the length of your article, the number of lines. And I imagine is that the county level is pretty much, is it like the same thing at the county level, those fees?
Yeah, it just depends on what that particular county's charging. In California, it's roughly between the county and the publication, just under $300. And then I believe I wrote down Georgia. Georgia is around the same, about 300 with the county registration and the publication. And that's just in cost.
Okay. Nevada is 30, right? Girls 35? It went up.
It depends on the vendor. It can be 40, but it depends on the vendor you pick. That's why we tell y'all, make sure you're doing your research, but it should be around that ballpark. If you're spending like $100 in Nevada, you need to do some research because you can find vendors that'll do it considerably lower than that.
Well, you also have to take into consideration, how many times does it have to run? Is it going to be every day for the next 6 weeks, or is it 3 or 4 times? So that's just going to continue to add fees as you go. So it really just depends, as always, on the state's requirement, and in this case, the newspaper's requirements. That's why we highly suggest that you go out and do a little bit of research, especially if you can get those vendor approved newspaper publications and kind of build, do a little research. Maybe you can get a little cheaper price, because I know those things can be kind of expensive.
So we are going to wrap it up. We are at the top of the hour. I just want to remind all of our attendees that if they have any questions that they want to submit, you can send those questions to ccquestions@ilsainc.com. Also, we have a podcast, which is Spot On Insurance. You can find it on spotoninsurance.com. You can also find it on YouTube and the replay for this session. So if you know people that weren't able to attend but that want to see this session, it'll be on YouTube on Spot On Insurance.
More importantly, as Joyce pointed out earlier, if you were overwhelmed in the beginning, you can just play it back and go through that state and really get the information.
And that's our world. People really, we love this stuff and we need this stuff, right? So we get, every time that we host these, the day after or a couple of hours later, hey, I couldn't attend. Where can I get the replay? So we thank you. Thank you, Joanne. Thank you, Diana, for joining us.
Yeah.
We really appreciate you giving us the time and giving all of your knowledge to our attendees. Thank you so much.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you. Thank you for doing this during vacation time.
I'm gonna go lay out in the sun. Well, it's sunny here. I'm gonna go lay out in the sun.
Enjoy. Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Take care, everybody.
Thank you.
Bye.